Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special presentation today, the 22nd of December 2021, a historic day in itself. Well, right now, moving on, we have so much to talk about today. The temperature out today is not too bad, even though it's got a little bit of warmth in it because of the humidity. It's 27 degrees and sunny right here in Brisbane. Hi, today we have this news segment and the daily India update coming up with Himanshu later in the program as well. But at 10 a.m. we will have the real estate update with Usha Chandra. Well, right now, let's get on to the news for today. And Prime Minister has got a message for all of us.
Tomorrow is an opportunity for us to compare notes, to get the most recent information that we've had. When we last met last Friday week, there was a lot we still didn't know about Omicron. We know more now, but there is still more to know. And the medical expert panel has met in between these two meetings, and I've already written to the premiers and set out the advice that they're providing, and there's important messages about the strong recommendation about mask use inside and things like that, and that's very sensible. But one of the key messages is, yes, we're going to need to continue to calibrate how we manage this virus and how we live with this virus in the face of Omicron. Of course that is necessary, but we're not going back to lockdowns. We're not going back to shutting down people's lives. We're going forward to live with this virus with common sense and responsibility. And there will be other variants beyond Omicron. And we have to ensure, as a country and as leaders around the country, we are putting in place measures that Australians can live with. And what that means is we have to move from a culture of mandates to a culture of responsibility. That's how we live with this virus into the future. Now, in my home state, in New South Wales, people are already wearing masks. They're not being fined if they don't, because Australians know what is a common sense, responsible action to look after their own health and to look after the health of those around them. But as a country, we've got to get past the heavy hand of government, and we've got to treat Australians like adults. And we all have our own responsibility in our communities and for our own health. People should get vaccinated. If you don't get vaccinated, you're more likely to get the virus, get very serious illness from the virus, and to die from the virus. That is three very good reasons why you should get vaccinated. Equally, it's important that you practice other common sense behaviours like washing your hands, keeping appropriate distances, but you don't need to get the ruler out, and you don't need to get people to come around hitting you with fines. We just need to live with this virus sensibly and practically, from mandates to responsibility. And as governments around the country, because as you know, the states have the total authority when it comes to public health orders. The Commonwealth does not have the power to direct those state and territory governments. And so what I'll be saying to them, and I know a number of premiers agree with this, is that we've got to move to the next phase of how we live with this virus. The time for that heavy hand is behind us. The time, I think, for knowing and trusting Australians who've proven themselves with one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, with one of the strongest economies coming out of this pandemic. 180,000 more people in jobs today than before the pandemic, and of course one of the lowest death rates in the world from COVID. So we need to keep listening to the advice, being sensible, move forward, allow Australians to live with this virus responsibly. Take the issues incredibly seriously, but let's live with this together and responsibly.
Let's live through this together and responsibly. Look, there have been a few points there which we were making clear even before this stage was reached, and that this is here. It is here to stay. Let's manage it. Leave the states all open. All the territories and the borders had to be open. Of course, in the initial stages, all overseas borders should have been closed. Well, right now, and that should have been tackled as a national approach. You have probably heard me say that time and time again. But right now, someone else is echoing my views, which is the IMA. Here's that report.
The AMA's position is that given the uncertainty about Omicron and already the pressure we're seeing across the country, that it is absolute sense to implement pretty simple things like mask wearing, which has been shown to reduce the spread of COVID, but also things like reinstitution of QR codes in New South Wales, and also some density limits at the moment, because what we're seeing is massive outbreaks, a lot stemming from places like nightclubs and pubs. That seems to make sense while we make sense of what Omicron brings to us, and whether it is something that, despite the predictions of large number of cases, whether it is something that's going to be very serious and is going to cause significant disease, break through the vaccines and cause a lot of hospitalisations.
What about booster shots? Should the gap be reduced even further?
Look, in theory, absolutely yes. That does make sense, because the evidence is that the Omicron seems to be able to reduce the efficacy of the current vaccines down to in the 30% at least, and probably in terms of stopping severe disease, it drops it down to about 70%. The problem is the logistics of it. As it is at the moment, with the 5-month setting after your second shot for boosters, we already have to get to about 4 million shots by the end of this month, and we've done 1.5. And we have to get to 7 million shots by the end of February, and then we have to add children on, so that's 10 million. Then on top of that, if we decide to shift down to, say, 4 or 3 months, then we've got a serious problem on our hands, because it's not the amount of vaccines, it's the vaccinating ability. And this is occurring at the time we've got holidays, and when in fact the states have been pulling back and stepping back, trying to close their mass vax clinics, trying to get their staff back to the hospitals, for example, and there has been a reduced level of support for general practice and pharmacies at the same time. So, look, we've got this thing going in different directions, and it is really an ideal situation to get those vaccines in people's arms as fast as possible, but the logistics are enormous.
Well, staying on the logistics, I mean, GPs were involved heavily in the first rollout, but there were issues. Will GPs and those kind of neighbourhood clinics be involved again if we up the booster campaign?
We hope so. I mean, general practice essentially have done like 25 million of the 40 million or so shots. So they've been the foundation of this. So they've got us through. They've essentially protected and saved Australia, particularly during that first Sydney outbreak. But unfortunately, it is holidays, and it's also a matter of the fact that there has been a reduction in support for both general practice and pharmacies, which unfortunately has led, I have had lots of calls from some general practice saying they just can't keep going, because it's really been something they've done on a smell of an oily rag, and they've actually it's going to turn into a loss maker for them, and they just can't keep going, especially when they're completely exhausted and with staff exhausted in the holidays. So look, I think we need to actually have all guns blazing on this, and that is to get the mass vaxxers back, and we need for the federal government to come to the party and actually adequately support general practice and pharmacies to get back in the saddle and do what they've been doing such a great job of all year.
Dr. Chris Moy, we've also seen mass lines at testing centres across the nation. New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard actually called it a tourism testing or something along those lines recently. Do we need this amount of testing for travel, or is there a better way around this?
Well, given the number of cases in New South Wales, if you're in another state, you're hoping that you're not going to bring people in from New South Wales bringing more COVID in. So, I mean, I think, look, there does need to be a reevaluation of the best use of our resources. I mean, especially at the moment over the holidays, and that includes things like testing ability, and also things like the boosters and everything that we've got in play, rapid antigen testing. But I mean, what we do need also is for all the states and federal government to make a serious attempt to slow this darn thing down. I mean, and that is simple things: masks, QR codes, and density limits, just to slow it down when we work out where we stand. Look, it could turn out to be a storm in a teacup, and that's true, but I'm a doctor, and my job is to actually tell you what the risks are. And the thing is that you don't want a doctor telling you, hey, look, she'll be right, I guarantee you'll be fine, when it might not be. We do not know at this stage, and it is absolutely prudent not to risk what we've done so far by not putting in some simple things at the moment while we actually work out where we stand with Omicron.
Perhaps one simple thing is a wider use of rapid antigen tests. Should they be subsidised and made more available in some way across the nation?
Look, I mean, that's a legitimate thing to consider. Certainly it is for places like the NHS, but at the moment it's not the problem of whether it's free or not. It's actually the problem there ain't enough of them. So, look, it's a bit of a moot question. That's for another day. At the moment we have now questions, which are, what do we do now? And look, we have to make decisions about testing, we have to make decisions about rapid antigen tests and things like that, but we really need to slow the thing down while we work it out. And we are asking National Cabinet to actually look at the Doherty modelling, which is worrying more from the sheer numbers. Now, hopefully their predictions about number of hospitalisations are not close, but if they are, they're extremely worrying, and really we need to slow the thing down while we work out where exactly we stand with Omicron, just as every other country is trying to do at the moment.
It has been mentioned that we need to do what every other country is doing, and probably that national approach is what I like about IMA, and that approach that they're saying. Well, right now we have seen long queues at testing stations. So what's driving those queues?
Many of you who are here at this press conference were there in those first days back in February, March of 2020. Do you remember that we thought we were doing really well when we had around about 30,000 tests a day? At the moment we're running close to 150,000 tests a day. All the laboratories, private and public, have stepped up incredibly. Obviously they're trying to access the various products that are required to do the testing, but that's not the sole issue. The issue is also that the staffing, from not only doing the actual pathology testing, but also the administration, making sure people are advised of their results, is currently under massive pressure. And a lot of that pressure is actually coming from what I would describe as tourism testing. We are, because of our and this is not meant to be a criticism, can I stress, all through this pandemic, our government, I as Health Minister, have tried to make sure that we work collaboratively with our other states and territories, and you'd know that the Premier's been working very extensively on that basis. But Queensland obviously is a massive attraction to many people in New South Wales. Their families are there, but also wonderful tourist opportunities there that were closed off for a long while. We are literally getting tens of thousands of people who are wanting to be tourists into Queensland, but also other states like South Australia and Tasmania, where tests are a prerequisite for travel.
And it is, and that's why the people who have come, they need to get their tests done and keep reporting on that. And that's what's driving those long queues. Well, states are expected to discuss the masks and how it's going to be handled, probably on a national scale. Here's that report.
Whoa! Look out! Look out!
COVID's curveballs continue to cause confusion.
Okay, who wants to come in now?
Across the country, cases are bouncing back, thanks largely to the highly contagious Omicron variant. For now, the Prime Minister's urging the population to hold its nerve while also taking personal responsibility.
If you're inside, bit of distancing. You don't need to cross into a mosh pit. That's probably not a good idea if you're going to see your grandmother on the weekend.
Alarmed at the rapid spread of the virus, doctors are demanding indoor mask mandates be immediately reintroduced across Australia.
This threat is real. It is spreading around the globe like wildfire, and it is causing disruptions to lives and economies.
Some states and territories have already acted, making mask wearing compulsory in certain settings.
We have to move from a culture of mandates to a culture of responsibility. That's how we live with this virus into the future.
Mask mandates will be discussed by states and territories at a hastily convened meeting of National Cabinet tomorrow. Leaders will also consider whether the COVID vaccination booster program needs to be overhauled, reducing the 5-month waiting period between second and third shots to help fight the Omicron wave. Early medical evidence suggests 2 doses of vaccine still offers protection against serious illness, but isn't enough to prevent an Omicron infection, meaning the definition of fully vaccinated may have to change to those who've had a booster.
I think it's looking more and more likely.
With some parts of the country still lagging in vaccination rates, Labor's worried the booster program could also be too slow.
Australians are waiting hours in queues to get tested, days to get their results, and weeks or even months to get a booster shot.
A nationwide delivery which may need more pace. Andrew Green, ABC.
Yes, a nationwide approach with a little bit more pace is what's required for. And as we are just moving on and looking at this Omicron, how has it become, or what kind of situation is it leaving us in?
Breaking news here on CBS Sports. The latest COVID-19 surge is leading to the postponement of multiple games.
From the basketball court to the ice hockey rink, COVID-19 is once again causing chaos. Even with vaccination rates as high as 97%, games are being postponed as players are exposed to the virus.
The sports leagues, because they test, and because they test routinely, they're identifying cases sooner. And what they're trying to do is pick off people beforehand, before they become super spreaders.
Omicron has raced ahead of other strains in the US, accounting for 73% of cases last week. In New York, it's even higher, with the variant responsible for 90% of new infections.
It's changing just amazingly quickly. A week ago, I would say I wasn't concerned, but in the past week, we're seeing anecdotally a lot of cases.
The World Health Organization says there's now consistent evidence that Omicron spreads significantly faster than the Delta strain, and it's urging people to postpone some festivities.
It's better to cancel now and celebrate later than to celebrate now and grieve later.
Officials keep stressing the importance of booster shots to protect against the Omicron variant, but only around 30% of vaccinated Americans have had their booster so far. President Joe Biden will try to change that when he addresses the nation later this week on this next phase of the pandemic. The president himself has potentially been exposed after coming into close contact with a staff member on Air Force One who later tested positive. Joe Biden has been given the all clear but will undergo further checks this week. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Washington.
So it is now becoming a dominant strain worldwide. Well, right now, let's go to Tasmania and for a different report this time. Medical cannabis. Let's see how that farm is shaping up.
This is what legal cannabis looks like on an industrial scale. With 40 staff and plans to hire 60 more, this is big business.
This is a cannabis plant and it's one of 3,000 in this greenhouse. Overall, we have another 10,000 plants growing outdoors as well, so 13,000 at the moment.
Today is harvest day in a greenhouse designed to grow the best cannabis flowers possible.
So every one of these plants is a clone, and that is how we're controlling the consistency of the output.
For CEO Dan Howard, the pungent smell and the sight of so much cannabis is normal. He's recently moved from Canada, where cannabis is legal.
So from the medical market evolved the adult use market, and that has now proliferated across the country with thousands and thousands of stores and hundreds of producers producing government-controlled, taxed, and high-quality cannabis across the country.
Do you see what happened in Canada also occurring here in Australia?
I believe Australia is on a similar path.
Confidence in the future of the market has companies spending big. Millions of dollars in development means this company is about to upgrade from this greenhouse to this one. To date, most medicinal cannabis consumed in Australia has been imported from overseas. But industry says this is changing as patient access to product is streamlined and new regulation levels the playing field for domestic producers. Josie Hamlet, who manages compliance, says these changes are a good start, but the rules are complex and inconsistent.
There's been a lot of permit and licence reforms, which has definitely made our life easier here. Instead of having like 3 licences and 6 permits, they've all been rolled into one.
Ultimately, this complexity impacts people like Peter Fielding, who was diagnosed with esophagus cancer 2 years ago. He's been using medicinal cannabis and says the drug works wonders.
It doesn't save your life, but it certainly helps to extend it. I was given 4 months I'm now up to 23 months and about 5 days. Not that I'm counting.
Mr. Fielding says getting it remains difficult and expensive.
Even though it's legal now, try finding somebody who can prescribe it legally. Try finding one. It's still a problem.
A growing industry for a growing need. David Barnott-Clement, ABC News.
So there you go, above ground and all legal there as well. Well, one of the things that people would be doing during the break is playing cards. Now, in many times people are saying that cards are not good, and in some families, children were banned from playing cards, saying it is bad. But studies have found that it has a very good social impact. Not only that, it increases your mental capacity. Here's the report.
Never missing a trick. This group gets together each week to play euchre.
We'll have a bit of fun and we'll look forward to Thursday.
The cards you get, you can make it on nothing and get through and get your point, or you can get euchred or whatever, and you rely on the cards, and sometimes you rely on your partner.
But there are concerns time might soon be up for games like this.
The younger generation don't know how to play it, so it is going to be lost.
Here at Goodwood Primary there's a game that's taken hold. But could it lead these players to older games like euchre?
Me and my brother Darcy Webb play Go Fish. We play that a lot. And Snap, because we have a few decks of cards at my house. My dad teaches me some games. I like learning new things.
Playing cards is about more than having fun. The social connection has mental health benefits.
That actually gives those social benefits and those additional opportunities for banter, and to collectively not necessarily be worrying about what's happening in the news, but instead worrying about what the person next to you has in their hand.
I like playing with my friends.
Well, I like the social interaction, and it also is good for thinking, strategy, memory.
A game for the brain and the heart. Loretta Lohberger, ABC News.
Well, there you go. Well, all the benefits of playing cards will make sure that we've got ours packed in the bag for the coming holidays. Well, right now it's time to go to Daily India Report with Himanshu.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, fresh COVID-19 cases have dropped in India. This follows a growing scare of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 that led to awareness campaigns, strict restrictions imposed on gatherings, and postponement of scheduled international flights. India has registered 5,326 fresh coronavirus infections, a fall of over 1,000 cases in a span of 24 hours. A day ago, the country recorded 6,563 new cases. The drop in fresh cases tally came amid a rise in infections being registered across the country from the highly contagious Omicron variant. According to the last available figures, the country registered 170 patients of the new strain, even as most of whom have been asymptomatic or shown mild symptoms. According to the latest update in the Health Ministry Bulletin, there are 79,097 active cases of COVID-19 at the moment, with an overall caseload of 0.24%. The total number of cases registered so far in the country currently stood at 3,47,52,164. Meanwhile, with 8,043 patients being declared free of coronavirus in the last 24 hours, the total number of recoveries touched 3,41,95,060. The data also revealed 453 deaths during the day, taking the total number of related fatalities to 4,78,007. The ministry further said 10,14,079 samples were tested for the virus on Monday, taking the total number of tests conducted so far to 66,61,26,659. A delimitation panel in India has sought 6 more assembly seats in Jammu, 1 in Kashmir. This comes after Jammu and Kashmir's status was changed to a union territory more than 2 years ago. A commission set up by the Government of India is redrawing poll constituencies in Jammu and Kashmir and has proposed adding 6 assembly seats in the Jammu region and 1 in Kashmir, sparking sharp responses from parties in the valley that condemned the proposal and distanced themselves from the process. The 3-member delimitation commission also proposed reserving 9 seats for scheduled tribe and 7 for scheduled castes, a first in the Union Territory. The panel presented the draft to 5 associate members who belong to the Bharatiya Janata Party and the National Conference and asked for their responses by December 31. The Commission has circulated a draft paper containing the details of how the proposal was formulated and circulated among the associated members. If the proposal is cleared, the total number of poll constituencies will rise from 83 to 90, with 43 in Jammu region and 47 in Kashmir. In the current State House, Jammu has 37 members and Kashmir has 46. The draft sparked furious responses from mainstream parties in the valley, which accused the panel of disenfranchising Kashmir. The NC, which has agreed to participate in the process, said it won't sign the draft proposal, and the People's Democratic Party, which had boycotted the panel's work, said the commission was serving the BJP's political interests. The BJP said Commission did a tremendous job and any reaction before the official report was premature. The Delimitation Commission, which aims to carve out new poll constituencies in the region, was set up in March 2020 with 5 parliament members from the UT as associate members. The delimitation process is important because it is the first step towards holding fresh elections in the region that has been under central rule for 3 years. Jammu and Kashmir lost their special status and statehood on August 5, 2019 when the central government moved to void Article 370 of the Constitution. Russian President Vladimir Putin thanks Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi over a phone call for hospitality during the recent summit in Delhi and also extends New Year greetings. Russian President Vladimir Putin on 20th December made a telephone call to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to express mutual intent for the multifaceted development of relations based on the special and privileged strategic partnership between Russia and India. Putin took the opportunity to warmly thank Modi for the hospitality extended to the Russian delegation during the high-level visit to New Delhi. They discussed practical aspects of implementing the agreements reached during the talks. Further, they continued the exchange of views on issues on international stability and security, including the situation in the Asia-Pacific region. Earlier, the Russian president, during his visit to India, acknowledged India as a great power and a time-tested friend. India and Russia held their maiden 2+2 dialogue on the margins of the summit between PM Modi and Putin in New Delhi on December 6th. The two countries sealed a much-awaited deal worth 5,100 crore rupees for the joint production of more than 500,000 AK-203 assault rifles at a facility in Uttar Pradesh's Amethi district. The summit coincided with the deliveries of components of S-400 air defense system to India, which was significant against the backdrop of threats from the US to impose secondary sanctions on the deal under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. India has maintained that its defense procurements are guided by the policy of strategic autonomy. India Central Asia Dialogue members emphasizes optimum usage of the international North-South Transport Corridor. In the third meeting of the Indian Central Asia Dialogue, the foreign ministers of India, Republic of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Republic of Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Republic of Uzbekistan on December 19th emphasized on optimum uses of the International North-South Transport Corridor as well as Ashgabat Agreement on International Transport and Transit Corridor to enhance connectivity between India and the Central Asian countries. The ministers issued a joint statement after the meeting stressed to include Chabar port within the framework of INSTC and expressed interest in cooperation on issues related to the development and strengthening of regional connectivity in Central and South Asia. Apart from this, the foreign ministers discussed the current situation in Afghanistan and its impact on the region following the Taliban's occupancy. Issues like the current humanitarian situation, terrorism, territorial integrity, respect for sovereignty and unity were discussed too. During the meeting, India highlighted the role of the International Solar Alliance initiative in the collective, rapid and massive deployment of solar energy for effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar underlined the role of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure in promoting disaster resilient infrastructure for reducing economic losses. Among other things, ministers of foreign affairs of Central Asian countries reiterated the support of their countries for permanent membership of India in the expanded and reformed UN Security Council. They welcomed the ongoing non-permanent tenure of India in the UNSC and its priorities. The ministers of foreign affairs of Central Asia during the meeting appreciated the important role of the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program in capacity building and human resource development of their countries, especially in information technology and communication skills in the English language. Foreign ministers of 5 Central Asian countries call on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted the importance that India attaches to its long-standing relations with the Central Asian countries as part of its extended neighborhood. The Prime Minister said this when the foreign ministers of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan jointly called on him. The foreign ministers of the 5 Central Asian countries were in India to attend the 3rd India-Central Asia Dialogue that was hosted by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on 19th December. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval were present in the meeting between Modi and the visiting foreign ministers. The Prime Minister emphasized the importance that India attaches to its long-standing relations with Central Asian countries, which are part of its extended neighborhood. Modi conveyed his felicitations to the ministers on the 30th anniversary of their independence this year. He recalled his memorable visit to all Central Asian countries in 2015 and subsequently to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and the Kyrgyz Republic. Indian equity indices Sensex and Nifty on 21st December regained more than 1,000 points after falling 1,800 points on 20th December. After nosediving in the previous session, equity indices rebounded on 21st December, tracking gains in index majors ICICI Bank, Infosys and Reliance Industries amid a positive trend in other Asian markets. BSE Sensex jumped 1,041 points or 1.87% to 56,863, while Nifty traded at 314 points or 1.89% higher at 16,929. HCL Tech was top gainer in the Sensex pack, rising around 3%, followed by Tech Mahindra, Tata Steel, Wipro, NTPC and Titan. On the other hand, Axis Bank was the sole loser. The negative sentiment in the previous session was caused by the global sell-off triggered by the explosive growth of the Omicron variant, may persist in the short run. Bollywood khiladi Akshay Kumar released the second song of his much-awaited film Atrangi Re. The song is titled Little Little. After the huge success.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave it there as we now, with the entertainment segment, there's always a thin line which we need to be aware of. Well, right now, as we know that at 10 a.m. we will have Usha Chandra coming on right here with the real estate update. So until that next segment, it's goodbye from us.